You think you can just bring this trash in here? Maybe this will teach you a lesson about respecting the rules.
You people always want attention. Throw that mess away. Right now, the teacher's voice cut through the cafeteria like a blade. In the next second, Isaiah Reed watched his lunch tip into the trash. Rice scattered. Chicken slid down the plastic. A small apple rolled, bumped the bin, and stopped like it had lost the will to move. Isaiah's hand stayed frozen in midair, as if his body had not caught up to what his eyes had just seen. A few kids laughed. Most stared. Some looked down fast, like silence could keep them safe. Isaiah did not cry. His throat tightened. His stomach dropped, and heat rushed into his face. But he did not give the room what it wanted. He stood there, 11 years old, thin shoulders held stiff, trying to breathe through a moment that felt bigger than him. The cafeteria smelled like pizza trays and bleach. The fluorescent lights made everything look harsher than it already was. The teacher stood over him with a tight smile that was not kindness, and a power she wore like a shield. Isaiah was the kind of kid adults described as quiet and respectful, which often meant he had learned to disappear. He spoke softly because loud voices at home used to mean trouble. He kept his head down because attention never felt safe. He did his work, turned it in on time, and tried to be grateful for every small good thing. The lunch his mother packed was one of those good things. It was warm when she closed the lid at sunrise, made with tired hands and a steady love that never asked for praise. It smelled like home, like care, like a promise that even on hard days someone was thinking of him. But in this cafeteria, it became a target. The teacher on duty that day had already been watching Isaiah long before his lunch came out. She had corrected him all week for things that did not matter. Speak up, sit straighter, look at me when I talk to you. Small demands that were less about order and more about control. Today she decided the lunch was wrong. Too different, too strong smelling. Not part of the usual. She said it was a rule. She said it was disruptive. She said she was tired of special treatment. And then she made an example out of him. Isaiah's friends stayed still. They were children with full mouths and worried eyes. They knew the danger of stepping into an adult's anger. One girl slid half her sandwich toward him, slow and careful, like kindness should be quiet, so it would not get punished. The teacher noticed and snapped her hand back with a look. No sharing. Rules were rules. Isaiah's stomach clenched as hunger became humiliation, and humiliation became something heavier, something that settled behind his ribs. He sat down with nothing. He tried to focus on the table grain, on the scratches, and dents, on anything that was not the heat in his face. He told himself it was only one meal. He told himself he could wait. He told himself not to make it worse. But his mind kept returning to one question that hurt more than hunger. Why him? The answer sat in the room like a quiet truth no one wanted. To say Isaiah had learned the shape of unfairness early, it was not always loud. Sometimes it smiled. Sometimes it pretended it was policy. Sometimes it wore a badge of authority and dared you to challenge it. His father had prepared him for the world, not by filling him with fear, but by teaching him a kind of calm that could survive storms. Your dignity is yours. Do not hand it to anyone. If you keep your footing, you can outlast the moment. His father, Daniel Reed, was not home much. When he was, the house felt steadier, like the walls remembered how to stand. Daniel moved with discipline. He folded clothes the same way every time. He checked locks without making a show of it. He spoke in short sentences that carried weight. He was military, the kind of man who had learned to control his emotions because other lives depended on it. He did not brag about what he had seen, did not use his uniform as a weapon. But Isaiah knew his father had walked through hard places and come back with scars you could not see. Daniel's love was quiet, but it was constant. That morning, before Isaiah left for school, Daniel had been on a rare day off, still in the house, still present. He had adjusted Isaiah's collar and told him to keep his head high. Not because the world was kind, but because Isaiah deserved to be. Now, across town, Daniel's phone vibrated while he was at an appointment he had promised himself he would not miss. A message came in from the school office about an incident involving his son. The note was vague, the kind of vague that tried to hide its own discomfort. Daniel read it once. Then again, his jaw tightened, not with rage, but with focus. He made one call. He asked one question. Then he ended the call and stood up. He went home. He opened his closet. He reached for the uniform. In the school hallway, posters about kindness and respect lined the walls. Bright colors, big words, easy promises. Daniel walked past them like a man walking through smoke. He was not there to perform. He was not there to threaten. He was there to protect his child with a kind of steadiness that made excuses collapse. When the cafeteria doors opened, the room shifted before anyone understood why. A uniform does that, not because it is magic, but because it signals consequences. Daniel stepped inside with controlled posture, polished boots, and eyes that took in everything at once. He saw the teacher near the trash. He saw the bin placed like a warning. Saw Isaiah sitting too still, as if movement might draw punishment, and he saw his son's face. Isaiah looked up, and the tightness in his chest loosened by one small degree. He did not run to his father. He did not call out. He simply sat up straighter, like his spine remembered it had support. Daniel walked to Isaiah's table and placed a hand on his shoulder. It was gentle, but it held an entire message. You are not alone. Then Daniel looked at the teacher. He asked what happened, and his voice was calm enough to be frightening. The teacher started talking fast, filling the air with rules and tone and complaints about respect. She talked about disruption. She talked about procedures. She talked about how children needed to learn. Daniel listened. He did not interrupt. He did not flare. He let her words build their own weight. When she finished, Daniel leaned forward slightly. Not to intimidate, but to be heard. He said hunger is not a lesson. He said dignity is not a privilege. He said the way you treat a child when you think no one important is watching tells me who you are. The room went silent in a new way. Not the silence of fear, silence of shame. Students who had laughed earlier stopped smiling. A boy with a full tray stared at his food like it had suddenly become hard to swallow. One staff member near the wall pressed a hand to her mouth. The manager of the cafeteria stepped back as if she had just realized. She had been standing too close to injustice. The teacher's face tightened. She tried to recover, tried to regain control. She said she was following guidelines. She said she could not allow outside food. She said she was maintaining order. Daniel asked if the guideline included grabbing a child's meal and throwing it away in front of everyone. He asked if the guideline included public humiliation. He asked if the guideline included ignoring the fact that Isaiah had harmed no one. The principal arrived, drawn by the stillness that had replaced cafeteria. Noise. The principal's eyes moved from Daniel's uniform to Isaiah's empty space on the table to the trash. And that suddenly looked like evidence. The teacher began speaking again, but the momentum was gone. The room had already decided which version. Felt true cafeteria worker quietly brought Isaiah a fresh meal. Not a replacement of what was lost, because nothing truly replaces humiliation, but a sign that the adults were finally awake. Daniel sat across from Isaiah, without making a show of it. Isaiah's hands trembled as he opened the tray, then steadied. He took a bite slowly, as if testing whether the world had become safe again. The teacher was asked to step out. Not shouted at, not dragged. Simply removed from power in the calmest way, which somehow made it more final. As Daniel and Isaiah stood to leave, Daniel looked across the cafeteria. His voice carried, still controlled, still firm. Some kids fight loud. Some kids fight by standing inside. He placed a hand on Isaiah's back and guided him toward the doors in the hallway. Isaiah finally let out a breath he had been holding all day. He asked if he had done something wrong. His voice was small, careful. It's the voice of a child who had learned to blame himself before the world could dot. Daniel stopped and knelt, so they were eye level. His expression softened. He told Isaiah that being different is not wrongdoing. He told him that his food, his culture, his quiet voice, his dignity, none of it was something to be ashamed of. He told him that respect is not something you earn by shrinking. Respect is something you deserve because you are human. And then he said one more line Isaiah would carry for years. His silence is not surrender, it is control. By the next day, meetings were scheduled, apologies were issued, policies were reviewed, promises were made. Some would be kept, some would fade. But the real change had already happened in one child's chest. Isaiah walked back into that cafeteria with his lunch again, and for the first time, he did not feel like he had to disappear. To survive, the teacher who threw his food away had wanted to teach a lesson. In the end, the lesson belonged to everyone else.